I want a divorce. For words. That's all it took to destroy 8 years of my life. For words delivered while I was 6 months pregnant with our first child. For words that came exactly 48 hours after I signed the biggest contract of my career. $850 million. He had no idea. I hadn't told him yet. You know, people always say what goes around comes around. They talk about karma like it's this mystical force that eventually balances the scales. I never believed in any of that until I lived it. Until I watched a man walk away from everything he ever wanted, chasing something he thought was better, only to discover he'd thrown away a fortune he never knew he had. Hey, before I take you through this journey, how are you doing today? Seriously, I hope you're good. Whether you're watching this from your living room, your car, or sneaking this in at work, I want you to know this story is going to stay with you. The weather here has been unpredictable lately, kind of like life, which is exactly what this story is about. Grab something comfortable, maybe some tea or coffee, because once I start, you're not going to want to stop listening. My name is Natalie Brennan. This is the story of how I went from a pregnant woman sobbing on her bathroom floor, abandoned and broken, to the CEO of a multi-million-dollar construction firm while my ex-husband lost everything, including the woman he left me for. But let me start from the beginning. I was 24 when I met Derek Lawson. If you're enjoying this story so far, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Drop a comment and let me know if you've ever had someone underestimate you. Because that's exactly what Derek did. At 24, I believed in soulmates. I believed that marriage was a partnership where you lifted each other up. I believed that when you loved someone, you celebrated their success instead of resenting it. I believed that pregnancy was a blessing you shared together, not a burden one person carried alone. I believed that vows meant something. That promises made in front of family and friends weren't just pretty words, but actual commitments you honored even when things got hard. I was wrong about all of it, but back then I was hopeful. Naive, maybe. I'd just finished my degree in civil engineering, one of 3 women in a class of 47 men. Derek was working in project management at Crossbuild Industries, a mid-sized construction firm in our city. We met at an industry mixer. He was charming, ambitious, confident. He talked about building things that mattered, about leaving a legacy. I fell for the vision he painted of our future together. We got married 8 months later. Small wedding, just family and close friends. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was 19, so it was mostly Derek's family. His mother never warmed to me. I was too focused on my career, she said. Too independent. Not soft enough. I should have seen that as the red flag it was, but I was in love. I thought love conquered everything. For the first few years, things were good. We both worked hard. I took a position as a junior engineer at a small firm, working my way up. Derek climbed the ladder at Crossbuild. We talked about starting a family someday, buying a house, building the life we dreamed about. But somewhere around year 5, things shifted. Derek started working longer hours. His boss, Vivian Cross, the daughter of the company's founder, had taken a personal interest in his career. She sees my potential, he'd say, coming home at 9, 10, 11 at night. She's grooming me for senior management, Nat. This is our ticket to the big time. Our ticket. He always said our, but I noticed he never invited me to company events anymore. When I'd suggest having Vivian and her husband over for dinner, Derek would brush it off. She's very private, he'd explain. Doesn't mix business and personal life. I was busy with my own career, so I didn't push it. That was my first mistake. The signs were all there, but I was too focused on the proposal I was developing to see them. For 2 years, I'd been working on a revolutionary approach to sustainable commercial construction. Recycled materials, reduced carbon footprint, cost-effective implementation. I'd been pitching it to firms across the state, getting rejected over and over. Then, finally, I got a meeting with Hamilton Development Group. They were planning a massive project, a new commercial district that would reshape the entire downtown area. My hands were shaking when I walked into that boardroom. 3 men, 2 women, all of them looking at me like I was wasting their time. I proved them wrong. 2 hours later, they asked me to submit a formal proposal. 3 weeks after that, they called me back. The contract was mine. $850 million. The biggest construction contract our city had seen in a decade. And it was mine.
Meaning?
I was going to tell Derek that night. I'd planned this whole thing. I'd pick up his favorite dinner, pour him a glass of wine, and share the news. But I had something else to tell him too. Something I discovered that morning. I was pregnant. 6 years of marriage, and finally it was happening. The baby we'd talked about. The family we'd planned. And now, with this contract, we'd have the financial security to give our child everything. I was floating on air when I got home that evening. Derek was already there. That should have been my second warning. He was never home before 7, and it was only 5:30. He was sitting at our kitchen table, and the look on his face made my stomach drop. "We need to talk," he said. I set down the bag of takeout food. "Okay. I actually have some news too, really good news. I want a divorce." The room tilted. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "What?" "I've been unhappy for a while now, Natalie. We've grown apart. We want different things. This isn't working anymore." My mouth was dry. "Derek, I don't understand. We're fine. We're happy. I have something to tell you. I'm in love with someone else." And there it was. The truth I'd been too blind to see. Too trusting to suspect. "Who?" I whispered, though I already knew. "Vivian. We didn't mean for it to happen, but we connect on a level you and I never did. She understands my ambitions. She can give me the life I deserve." The life he deserved. Not the life we deserved. The life he deserved. "I'm pregnant," I said. The words fell out of me like stones. Derek's face went pale, then hard. "That doesn't change anything. If anything, it proves we're not compatible. You knew I wasn't ready for kids yet. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You make these decisions without considering what I want." I stared at him. "We've been trying for a year, Derek. You said you wanted this." I said what you wanted to hear. Vivian's husband just died, and she needs someone who can be a real partner to her. Someone who puts her first. "That's not you, Natalie. That's never been you." He stood up and grabbed a bag I hadn't noticed by the door. "My lawyer will contact you about the divorce papers. I'll be fair about the asset split, but I want this done quickly. Vivian and I are planning to get engaged next month." Then he walked out. Just like that. 8 years, and he walked out without looking back. I stood in that kitchen for 10 minutes before my legs gave out. I slid down the cabinet to the floor, one hand on my stomach, protecting the baby he didn't want. The baby I was going to raise alone. And the contract worth $850 million? It was still in my bag and signed, waiting for me to return it tomorrow. The contract that would change everything. The contract Derek knew nothing about. He thought he was leaving a struggling engineer with an unwanted pregnancy. He had no idea he was walking away from a fortune. I need to take you back to understand how I got here. How a woman who'd fought her way through engineering school, who'd survived losing both parents, who'd built herself from nothing, ended up on a kitchen floor believing she was worth nothing. My parents died 3 weeks before my 20th birthday. Head-on collision with a drunk driver on Highway 52. They were coming back from their anniversary dinner. 32 years of marriage, celebrated with death. I inherited $43,000 after the funeral expenses, their house with 15 years left on the mortgage, and a grief so heavy I could barely breathe for months. I sold the house. Used the money to finish school. I had 1 semester left, and I was determined to finish what my dad started. He was the one who got me into engineering. He'd take me to construction sites when I was a kid, show me buildings going up, explain how everything worked. "The world needs builders, Nat," he'd say. "People who create things that last." I graduated with honors, but no family to watch me walk across that stage. That's the thing nobody tells you about being an orphan as an adult. You're supposed to be independent, capable, but there's this hollowness inside you that never really fills. You're always looking for something to belong to. Someone to belong to. Derek felt like home. When I met him, I was raw and lonely and desperate to build a new family. He was 28, established, confident. He had parents who hosted Sunday dinners and a sister who welcomed me with hugs. I wanted that. I needed that. So when he proposed after 6 months, I said yes, without hesitation. His mother, Patricia Lawson, made her feelings clear from the start. The first time Derek brought me to Sunday dinner, she asked what my father did for a living. When I said he'd been a regional manager for a trucking company, her smile tightened. How quaint, she said. Then she turned to Derek's sister and started discussing their country club's upcoming gala. Derek squeezed my hand under the table. Don't worry about her, he whispered. She's like that with everyone. But she wasn't. She was like that with me. With people she considered beneath her social standing. The Lawsons had money, old money, the kind that came with expectations and judgments. Derek's father had built Crossbuild Industries from the ground up, and when he retired, he sold it to Victor Cross, whose daughter Vivian now ran the company. Derek worshipped Vivian from the moment he started working there. She's brilliant, he'd tell me over dinner. She's transforming the company. She sees potential where others see limitations. I should have recognized the way his eyes lit up when he talked about her. The way he started comparing me to her. Vivian never lets emotions cloud her judgment, he'd say when I got upset about something. Vivian understands that success requires sacrifice. When I asked him to skip work for my company's holiday party. 6 months before he asked for the divorce, Vivian's husband died. Richard Cross had been 23 years older than Vivian, a business partner of her father's who'd married her when she was 25 and he was 48. Their marriage was more merger than romance. Everyone knew that. When he had a heart attack at 61, Vivian inherited his share of the company and became the sole owner of Crossbuild Industries. Derek came home that night with news of Richard's death, and I swear there was excitement in his voice underneath the appropriate sadness. This changes everything for the company, he said. Vivian's going to need people she can trust. This could be my opportunity to really prove myself. The poor woman just lost her husband, I said. Maybe give her time to grieve before you start thinking about promotions. His jaw tightened. This is why you don't understand business, Natalie. Opportunities don't wait for convenient timing. Vivian's strong. She'll appreciate having someone step up when she needs support. He started staying at the office even later after that. Vivian needs help managing everything, he'd explain. I'm just being a good employee. A good employee. That's what he called it. Meanwhile, I was drowning in my own career struggles. I'd been pitching my sustainable construction concept for 18 months. Every firm I approached either dismissed it as too experimental or stole elements of my ideas and ghosted me. I couldn't prove they'd stolen anything, but I'd see my concept showing up in their proposals months later. Different enough to avoid legal issues, similar enough that I knew. It was crushing. I'd put everything into this project. Not just my time and expertise, but money we didn't really have. Derek didn't know, but I'd taken out a personal loan for $30,000 to develop the full proposal, complete with architectural renderings, cost analyses, environmental impact studies. I maxed out 2 credit cards commissioning the research I needed to prove my concept would work. I told myself it would be worth it when someone finally said yes. When someone finally saw the value in what I was creating. But rejection after rejection wore me down. I started wondering if Derek's mother was right. If I was reaching above my station. If I should just accept a normal engineering position and stop trying to be something more. Derek didn't help. When I'd come home defeated from another failed pitch, he'd sigh and say things that felt supportive but cut deep. Maybe it's just not the right time for this idea, Nat. Maybe you should focus on building experience first instead of trying to revolutionize the industry. You sound like your mother, I'd snap. My mother wants what's best for us. Maybe she has a point about priorities. Priorities. He started using that word a lot. My priorities were wrong. I focused on the wrong things. I didn't prioritize our marriage, his needs, his career advancement. Everything was about what I was doing wrong. Looking back, I can see it clearly. The gaslighting. The way he slowly made me doubt myself, my worth, my judgment. But when you're in it, when you love someone and you've already lost everyone else, you don't see it. You just try harder to be better, to fix whatever's broken. The final betrayal started 3 months before he left me. I didn't know it then, but that's when Derek and Vivian's relationship became physical. I found out later from Janet, Derek's sister, who saw them together at a restaurant 2 hours outside the city. She called me immediately, upset and confused. Natalie, I just saw Derek with a woman at Riverside Bistro. They were holding hands, kissing. I confronted him, and he said I was mistaken, but I know what I saw. My stomach turned to ice. What did she look like? Tall, dark hair, expensive clothes. Really put together. He called her Vivian. I hung up and called Derek. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding annoyed. I'm in a meeting, Nat. What's wrong? Your sister just saw you with Vivian. She said you were kissing. Silence. Then a laugh, forced and condescending. Janet saw me having a business dinner with my boss. We were discussing a major deal. If she misinterpreted professional interaction, that's her problem. Honestly, Natalie, this jealousy is getting old. You can't accuse me of something every time I work late. She said you were holding hands. She's mistaken. I'm hanging up now. We'll discuss this paranoia when I get home. He came home at midnight, found me waiting in the living room, and spent 2 hours convincing me I was crazy. That Janet had always been dramatic. That my insecurity was damaging our marriage. That if I trusted him, really trusted him, I wouldn't believe such ridiculous accusations. By the end of it, I was apologizing to him, promising to work on my trust issues, promising to stop letting my fears control me. That's what he did. He made me doubt reality itself. Janet tried to talk to me twice more, but Derek had planted the seed. She's always been jealous of what we have, he'd say. She's never had a successful relationship, and she can't stand that we do. So I pulled away from the one person who was trying to warn me, the one person who saw the truth. And then came the Hamilton Development Group meeting. My last-ditch effort. I'd burned through my savings, maxed out my credit, and put everything into one final pitch. If they said no, I was done. I'd have to declare bankruptcy and accept that I'd failed. I walked into that boardroom expecting nothing. The lead developer, James Hamilton, barely looked at me when I started my presentation. But halfway through, something shifted. He started asking questions. Real questions. By the end, all 5 of them were leaning forward, engaged. Ms. Brennan, James said, this is exactly what we've been looking for. Sustainable, cost-effective, innovative. When can you start? I couldn't breathe. You want to move forward? We want to offer you the contract. The entire project. $850 million over 5 years. Your firm would be the primary contractor. I don't have a firm. I'm an independent consultant. He smiled. Then I suggest you start one. We'll need the signed contract back by end of week, but consider this a verbal agreement. Congratulations, Ms. Brennan. You just became a very successful businesswoman. I floated out of that building. $850 million. I'd done it. Everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd fought for, it had all paid off. I called Derek immediately, but it went to voicemail. I tried 3 more times. Nothing. I decided to surprise him. I'd go home, make his favorite meal, tell him about the contract, and then share the other news. The news I'd discovered that morning when the nausea I'd been feeling for weeks finally made sense. I stopped at a drugstore, and bought 3 pregnancy tests. All positive. I was 6 weeks along. We were going to have a baby. And now we had the financial security to give that baby everything. I was crying happy tears when I pulled into our driveway and saw Derek's car already there. At 5:30 in the afternoon, when he was supposed to be at work until at least 8. I walked in with bags of groceries, a heart full of joy, and a future I thought was finally falling into place. Then he said those 4 words, and everything shattered. I want a divorce. I spent that night on the bathroom floor. Not crying, just numb. My hand kept moving to my stomach, this protective gesture for a life Derek didn't want. A life he'd rejected before even knowing it existed. The contract sat on the kitchen counter, untouched. $850 million, and all I could think about was the fact that I was going to raise a baby alone. When the sun came up, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was survival instinct. Maybe it was spite. But I picked myself up, washed my face, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't telling Derek about the contract. He wanted a divorce? Fine. We'd divorce. But he'd walked out thinking I was just a struggling engineer with some debt and an unwanted pregnancy. He'd made his choice based on what he thought I was worth. I wasn't going to correct his assumption. I called my college roommate Lisa Park. She was a divorce attorney in the next state over, successful and sharp. We kept in touch over the years, mostly holiday cards and occasional phone calls. When she answered, her voice was warm and surprised. Natalie? It's been forever. How are you? I need a lawyer. Derek wants a divorce, and I need someone he can't manipulate. Her tone changed instantly. Tell me everything. I did. All of it except the contract. That part 1 kept to myself for now. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Okay. I thought about the baby growing inside me. I'd be 7 months pregnant by then. I can do that. And I meant it. I had something to prove now. Not just to Derek or his mother or everyone who doubted me. To myself. To my baby. I was going to build an empire from nothing just like my father taught me. Derek got served with divorce papers that evening. He called me 17 times. I didn't answer. Finally, he showed up at the house, our house, the one we'd bought together 3 years ago. I'd changed the locks. Robert had advised it. It's your marital home. You're pregnant. He abandoned you. Change the locks. Derek pounded on the door. Natalie. Open up. We need to talk about this. I stood on the other side, one hand on my stomach, and said nothing. You can't just file for divorce without discussing it. This is insane. I know you're upset, but we can figure out the details like adults. Adults. Like he'd been an adult when he walked out on his pregnant wife for his boss. My lawyer will contact your lawyer. I called through the door. We have nothing to discuss. Natalie, please. I know I hurt you, but we can handle this maturely. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I'm not trying to leave you with nothing. How generous. How magnanimous. He'd destroy my life, but make sure I wasn't left with nothing. Go home to Vivian, I said. We're done talking. I heard him punch the door. Then footsteps retreating. His car starting. Tires screeching as he pulled away. I slid down to the floor, shaking. Not from fear or sadness this time, but from adrenaline. I'd stood up to him. I'd taken control. For the first time in our marriage, I'd chosen myself. The next few weeks were chaos. I was building a company from scratch, while dealing with morning sickness that lasted all day. I hired a business manager, an accountant, and started recruiting engineers. The news spread fast in our industry. Natalie Brennan, the woman who'd been pitching sustainable construction for 2 years, had finally landed the big contract. My phone rang constantly. Some calls were congratulatory. Others were from firms that had rejected me, suddenly interested in partnerships. I took a certain satisfaction in declining every single one. But I kept the business quiet otherwise. No press releases, no public announcements. Just quiet, steady building. I worked from home mostly, setting up an office in our spare bedroom. The room Derek had said would be his game room someday. Now it was my headquarters. Poetic justice, maybe. Derek's lawyer reached out to Robert with a settlement proposal. $50,000, the car I was driving, and half the equity in the house. In exchange, I'd waive spousal support and we'd share custody of the baby. Robert called me laughing. He's offering you pennies. The house alone has $200,000 in equity. You're entitled to half of everything he has, plus ongoing support. This is insulting. Counter with what? Everything. Full custody, child support, the house, half his retirement accounts, half of everything. Make him hurt. I don't want his money, Robert. I have my own. This isn't about money. It's about consequences. He doesn't get to walk away clean. So we countered. Full custody with supervised visitation until the baby was 2. The house. $75,000 in cash. Half his retirement accounts. $2,500 a month in child support. Derek lost his mind. He called me screaming. I'd blocked his number, so he called from Vivian's phone. You're trying to ruin me. $2,500 a month? For a baby I didn't even want? You did this on purpose. Got pregnant to trap me. We were trying for a year, Derek. You said you wanted this baby. I was humoring you. I thought you'd give up eventually. And now you're using it to bleed me dry? The house is worth $200,000 and you want all of it. I want what I'm entitled to. Your lawyer said we'd handle this maturely, remember? This is Vivian's money you're going after. She's the one who'll end up supporting your lifestyle because my salary won't cover what you're demanding. And there it was. The truth. He'd already moved in with her. Already started spending her money. Already positioned himself as the victim who had to be rescued. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you left your pregnant wife, I said and hung up. Vivian called the next day. I almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something told me to pick up. Natalie? This is Vivian Cross. I think we should meet. Her voice was smooth, cultured, confident. Everything Derek had probably told her I wasn't. I don't think that's appropriate, I said. I understand this situation is difficult for everyone. But Derek and I are planning to marry, and I'd like to establish a civil relationship with you. For the baby's sake. The baby she'd helped create by sleeping with the married man. The baby Derek had told me he didn't want. Derek told me he doesn't want this baby. Why would you care about establishing a relationship? She paused. Derek's been under a lot of stress. He doesn't mean that. Once the baby's born, he'll feel differently. He's going to be a wonderful father. I almost laughed. You don't know him at all, do you? I know him better than you think. We connect on a level most people never achieve. He's told me everything about your marriage, about how you prioritized your career over his needs, how you got pregnant without really discussing it with him, how you've always been more focused on proving yourself than being a true partner. My hands clenched around the phone. He told you I got pregnant on purpose? He told me you'd been pressuring him for months, that he kept saying he wasn't ready, but you pushed ahead anyway. The rewriting of history was breathtaking. We'd been actively trying. He'd been tracking my cycle, suggesting the best times, talking about baby names. And now he was telling his mistress I'd trapped him? Vivian, you can believe whatever Derek tells you. But when this baby is born and he's still not interested, don't say I didn't warn you. He's very good at saying what people want to hear. That's quite bitter of you. No, it's experience. Good luck with your marriage. You're going to need it. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. Not from anger this time, but from something else. Recognition. I'd heard that tone before. That absolute certainty that she knew better, that she had everything figured out, that she was special and different, and exempt from the normal rules. I'd used that tone once too. When Janet tried to warn me. When my friends suggested Derek was working too much with Vivian. When every sign pointed to the truth I didn't want to see. Vivian was where I'd been 2 years ago. Confident in her relationship, certain of her partner's devotion, blind to the reality that Derek was showing her exactly who he was. But unlike me, Vivian had money, power, resources. She thought that would protect her. She thought Derek loved her. She had no idea she was just his next meal ticket, his upgrade, his path to the wealth and status he'd always craved. And when something better came along, or when she stopped being useful, he'd do to her exactly what he'd done to me. That thought should have made me happy. Instead, it just made me tired. I was 3 months pregnant, building a multi-million-dollar company, fighting a bitter divorce, and trying to survive on 4 hours of sleep and constant nausea. But I couldn't stop. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant feeling. Feeling meant breaking down. And I couldn't afford to break down. So I worked. I hired a structural engineer named Tom Winters who'd been laid off from his previous firm. I brought on an architect, a project manager, 3 junior engineers. I rented office space, set up accounts, ordered equipment. The baby grew. My company grew. And Derek's anger grew. His lawyer sent another proposal. $25,000, the car, and a quarter of the house equity. Still insulting, but better. Robert advised holding out. He's desperate to settle. That means Vivian's pressuring him. She wants to marry him, but she won't until the divorce is final. Make him sweat. How long can we drag this out? Months if we want. But I'd suggest we settle before the baby's born. You don't want to be dealing with custody negotiations with a newborn. He was right. So we settled. $100,000, the house, half his retirement accounts, supervised visitation for the first year, and $1,500 a month in child support. Derek agreed through gritted teeth. The divorce was final 3 weeks later. 4 months after he'd asked for it. 4 months after he'd walked away thinking I had nothing. I was 6 months pregnant, the CEO of a construction company with an $850 million contract, and completely alone. But I'd protected myself. I'd protected my baby. And Derek still had no idea what he'd lost. That ignorance wouldn't last forever. The project was going public next month. My name would be attached. The news would spread. Part of me couldn't wait for that moment. The moment Derek realized exactly what he'd walked away from. The other part of me was terrified. Because when Derek found out, he wouldn't just be angry. He'd be dangerous. And I had no idea what he'd do when he discovered the truth. The morning sickness never really stopped. It just evolved into constant exhaustion and a body that didn't feel like mine anymore. I was building 2 things at once, a baby and a business empire. Both were draining me dry. Tom Winters became my lifeline. He was 52, divorced, and had spent 30 years in construction before his firm downsized. When I hired him, he looked at me with this mixture of skepticism and desperation. You're asking me to help you build a firm from scratch in 4 months while you're pregnant? Yes. And you've never run a company before? No. He laughed. When do I start? Tom understood the vision in a way no one else did. He'd spent decades watching firms cut corners, sacrifice quality for profit, ignore environmental impact for speed. My approach excited him. Within 2 weeks, he'd recruited half our team from his network of laid-off engineers who were hungry for something meaningful. We broke ground on the Hamilton project when I was 7 months pregnant. The press came out for it, local news mostly. James Hamilton gave a speech about innovation and sustainability. When he introduced me as the CEO of Brennan Solutions, I saw surprise on some faces. A pregnant woman in her early 30s running a project this size? The doubt was visible. But James believed in me. He'd told me once, over coffee while we discussed project timelines, that he'd lost 3 bids to firms who'd clearly stolen elements of my original pitch. I knew someone out there had the real vision, he'd said. When you walked in, I recognized pieces of ideas I'd seen before. But you had the whole picture. The authentic thing. That's why I chose you. The authentic thing. That phrase stuck with me. Derek had never valued authenticity. He'd valued appearances, status, connections. He'd traded authentic for what he thought was better. I wondered if he was happy. If Vivian was everything he'd imagined, then I'd remind myself I didn't care. Except I did care. Not because I wanted him back, God no. But because there was this sick curiosity about whether his betrayal had been worth it. Whether the life he'd chosen was better than the one he'd destroyed. I got my answer sooner than expected. Janet called me 2 months after the divorce was final. We'd reconnected after everything fell apart. She'd apologized for not pushing harder when she saw Derek with Vivian, and I'd apologized for shutting her out. She was one of the few people who visited regularly, bringing groceries and sitting with me while I worked. Nat, you need to see this. Her voice was tight with anger. She came over with her laptop and pulled up Derek's social media. I'd blocked him everywhere, so I hadn't seen any of his posts. But Janet had been watching. There were photos. Derek and Vivian at charity galas. Derek and Vivian on a yacht. Derek in an expensive suit I knew he couldn't afford on his salary, standing next to Vivian in designer clothes that cost more than our old mortgage payment. And then the engagement announcement. Posted 3 days ago. Vivian Cross and Derek Lawson are thrilled to announce their engagement. After finding true partnership and love, they're excited to begin their forever together. True partnership. The words made my stomach turn. There's more, Janet said quietly, scrolling down to the comments. Patricia Lawson, Derek's mother, had commented, "Finally, my son has found a woman worthy of him. So happy to welcome Vivian to our family." A woman worthy of him. I'd never been worthy in Patricia's eyes. Too poor, too focused on career, too independent. But Vivian, with her money and her company and her social status, she was worthy. "I'm sorry," Janet said. "I thought you should know." "It's fine. I don't care." "You're allowed to care, Nat. He humiliated you. He freed me." I meant it. Looking at those photos, at Derek's calculated smile and Vivian's possessive hand on his arm, all I felt was relief. Relief that I wasn't in that life anymore. Relief that I'd escaped. But the photos did something else too. They lit a fire under me. Derek thought he'd upgraded. Thought he'd escaped a mediocre life with a mediocre wife for something better. I wanted him to know exactly what he'd given up. The project was ahead of schedule. Tom had built a team that worked like a machine. We were coming in under budget too, which meant higher profit margins. James was thrilled. He'd started talking about future projects, other developers he wanted to introduce me to. "You're building a reputation," he told me during a site visit. "People are noticing. They want to know who Natalie Brennan is." My company was growing faster than my belly, which was saying something. At 8 months pregnant, I looked like I'd swallowed a beach ball. I was exhausted all the time. My feet were swollen, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 3 hours straight. But I was happy. Genuinely happy. Building something that mattered. Creating something that would last. My dad would have been proud. Derek was already there with his lawyer. When he saw me, his face went through several expressions. Shock at how pregnant I was. Discomfort, maybe even shame. Then she sighed. "Because I've been watching my son with that woman, and I see what Janet saw months ago. What you tried to tell us. He doesn't love her. He loves what she can give him. And it's made me look at everything differently. At how I treated you. You were good for Derek. You made him better. And we drove you away." Derek drove me away. He made his choice. I know. And it was the wrong choice. But there's still a baby coming. My grandchild. I'd like to be part of that child's life, if you'll let me. Every instinct told me to say no. To shut her out like she'd shut me out for years. But I thought about my baby growing up without grandparents. Without family. I'd lost my parents. Did I want my child to lose out on family because of pride? "We can talk after the baby's born," I said finally. "But I'm not making any promises." "That's fair." "Thank you, Natalie." And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. She hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Janet called an hour later. Mom talked to you?
Yeah.
What changed? She went to dinner at Vivian's last week. Saw how Derek acts around her. He's different. Performative. He laughs at things that aren't funny, agrees with everything she says, constantly touches her like he's proving something. Mom said it was like watching a stranger wear her son's face. That's exactly who Derek is. He becomes whoever he needs to be to get what he wants.
She sees it now.
She feels terrible about how she treated you. Should I believe her? I think so. She's been talking about the baby nonstop. Buying things, asking what you need. She wants to help, Nat. And honestly, you could use the help. She was right. I was exhausted and alone and terrified of giving birth by myself. Having Patricia there, having family might make it bearable. Okay, I said. We'll see how it goes. The next week, Patricia came to the house. She brought food, baby clothes, and an apology that seemed genuine. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about watching Derek change over the years, how Vivian had influenced him, how she'd ignored the signs because she liked the idea of Derek marrying wealth. I was wrong, she said. About everything. About you, about what matters, about what makes a good marriage. You built yourself from nothing. You worked hard. You were loyal. You loved my son even when he didn't deserve it. And I looked down on you for not having the right pedigree. I'm ashamed. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. I didn't forgive her completely, not yet. But it was a start. 2 days before my due date, Tom called with news. We need to do a press conference. The mayor wants to tour the site next week, and the media's going to be there. You need to be there too. I'm about to have a baby, Tom. I know, but this is important. It's good publicity. Good for the company, good for future contracts. Can you do it? I looked down at my enormous belly, at the life I was about to bring into the world, at everything I'd built while Derek thought I was struggling. Yes, I said. I can do it. The press conference was scheduled for 3 days away. If the baby came early, Tom would handle it. But something told me the baby would wait. Like, even in the womb, my child knew we had something to prove first. The universe had a sense of humor. Or maybe it was just karma. Because the press conference was going to change everything. Once my name and face were attached to this project publicly, Derek would find out. The whole city would find out. The woman he'd abandoned was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company with the biggest contract in the city's history. Part of me was terrified. Part of me couldn't wait. But mostly, I was focused on the future. On my baby, my company, my life. Derek was the past. A painful, necessary past that had led me here. And here was pretty damn good, all things considered. I just had to get through the next 72 hours without going into labor.
How hard could that be?
The press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning. I woke up at 6 with contractions. Not the practice ones I'd been having for weeks, but real ones. Sharp, rhythmic, undeniable. No, I said out loud to my empty bedroom. Not today. Any day but today. The baby didn't care about my schedule. I called my doctor. She told me to time the contractions and come in when they were 5 minutes apart. They were at 12 minutes. I had time. I called Tom. I might be in labor.
What?
Natalie, forget the press conference. Go to the hospital. The contractions are 12 minutes apart. I have hours, maybe a whole day. First babies take forever, right? I can do the press conference and then go to the hospital. That's insane. That's dedication. Pick me up at 9:30. If the contractions get worse, we'll cancel. But I'm doing this, Tom. He tried to argue, but I hung up. I showered through 2 contractions, got dressed through another. By 9 o'clock, they were at 10 minutes apart. Uncomfortable, but manageable. I could do this. I had to do this. Tom picked me up looking terrified. You're crazy. You know that, right?
I'm motivated.
There's a difference. We arrived at the construction site at 9:45. The mayor was already there with her team. Local news crews were setting up. There were maybe 50 people gathered, including city council members, other developers, and journalists I didn't recognize. James Hamilton rushed over when he saw me. Natalie, are you okay?
I've fine.
Let's do this. Another contraction hit. I gripped Tom's arm and breathed through it. 9 minutes since the last one. Natalie, Tom said quietly, we need to get you to a hospital. After the press conference.
I've fine.
I wasn't fine. I was in labor at a press conference, about to go public with the success I'd built while my ex-husband thought I was barely surviving. But I'd come this far. I wasn't backing down now. The mayor gave her speech first. Talked about economic development, job creation, environmental responsibility. Then she introduced James, who talked about the project vision. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium, hugely pregnant and determined. Cameras flashed. I saw people whispering, pointing at my belly. Good morning. I'm Natalie Brennan, CEO of Brennan Solutions. 2 years ago, I had an idea for sustainable construction that could revolutionize how we build commercial spaces. I spent 18 months pitching that idea to firms across the state. Everyone said no. They said it was too experimental, too risky, too expensive. Some of them stole pieces of my concept and ghosted me. I paused as another contraction started, gripped the podium, breathed through it. 8.5 minutes. But I kept going, because I believed in this vision. And when Hamilton Development Group gave me a chance, I proved that sustainable construction isn't just possible, it's profitable. We're ahead of schedule and under budget. We're creating jobs, reducing environmental impact, and building something that will last for generations. The cameras were going crazy. Questions started flying. Ms. Brennan, how did you build a company from scratch in less than a year? How does it feel to be a woman leading a project this size? What's next for Brennan Solutions? I answered questions for 15 minutes, through 2 more contractions. Tom stood off to the side, looking like he might pass out. But I was riding on adrenaline and spite and the knowledge that somewhere in this city, Derek had no idea his ex-wife was standing in front of cameras, announcing her success. Then I saw him. In the back of the crowd, standing next to Vivian. His face was pale, shocked, frozen. He was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Our eyes met across the crowd. I saw the exact moment he understood. The exact moment he realized what he'd walked away from. I smiled. Not a friendly smile. A smile that said, "You lost." The press conference ended. People came up to congratulate me, to ask for business cards, to request follow-up interviews. I handed out cards, made appointments, played the role of successful CEO. All while having contractions every 7 minutes and watching Derek push through the crowd toward me. Natalie, he was shouting. People turned to look. Natalie, we need to talk. Security moved to intercept him, but I waved them off. Let him come. Let everyone see this. He reached me, Vivian trailing behind him. Up close, he looked worse than I'd ever seen him. His eyes were wild, desperate. You've had this the whole time, he demanded. This company? This contract? And you didn't tell me?
You didn't ask.
You were too busy asking for a divorce. We were still married when you signed this. I'm entitled to half. There it was. Not congratulations. Not pride in what I'd accomplished. Just greed. Actually, you're not. We separated before I signed the contract. My lawyer made sure of that. That's fraud. You hid assets during our divorce. I hid nothing. The assets didn't exist when we separated. Everything I built after you left. You don't get to walk away and then come back when you realize what you missed. Vivian stepped forward. Her composure was cracking. Derek, let's go. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing? Derek spun on her. She has an $850 million contract. Do you understand what that means? We could have had everything.
We.
Like he and I were still a team. Like he hadn't thrown me away for the woman standing next to him. You have everything, I said quietly. You have Vivian. The woman worthy of you, remember? The true partnership. The real love. Or was that all a lie too? His face flushed. This is different. This is business. No, this is consequences. You chose. You don't get to unchose because it didn't work out the way you planned. Another contraction hit. Harder this time. I gasped and grabbed the podium. Tom was there immediately. That's it. We're going to the hospital.
Now.
What? Derek looked at my belly like he'd forgotten about the baby. You're in labor?
Yes.
While running a press conference. Because, unlike you, I don't give up when things get hard. Tom was already calling for his car. James appeared with his assistant. We'll handle things here. Go have that baby. Derek was still standing there, looking lost. Vivian had moved away, her face tight with anger or humiliation or both. Natalie, please, Derek said. We need to talk about this. About the company, about my rights. You have no rights. You walked away. The courts agreed. This conversation is over. Tom helped me toward the car. The contractions were coming faster now. 5 minutes apart. The baby was definitely coming, and soon. As we drove away, I looked back and saw Derek and Vivian arguing. He was gesturing wildly. She was shaking her head. Their perfect relationship was cracking in public, and part of me felt satisfied. But mostly I just felt the contractions getting stronger and closer together. Call Patricia, I told Tom. Tell her it's time.
He did.
She said she'd meet us at the hospital. The baby was born 6 hours later. A girl. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect in every way. I named her Grace. Because Grace was what I needed to survive the last year. Grace was what had carried me through. Patricia was there, crying and apologizing and holding her granddaughter with shaking hands. Janet came too, bringing flowers and tears of joy. Tom showed up with a balloon that said, "Congratulations, boss." The only person missing was the person who should have been there. But I didn't need Derek. I had everything that mattered. I was exhausted, hormonal, overwhelmed. But I was happy. Looking at Grace's tiny face, her perfect fingers, her eyes that looked like mine, I felt complete in a way I never felt with Derek. Then my phone started ringing. I turned it off during labor, but now that Grace was born and sleeping, I turned it back on. 47 missed calls. 32 from unknown numbers. 15 from Derek's number. And 1 from Robert, my lawyer. His voicemail was urgent. Natalie, call me as soon as you get this. Derek's filed an emergency motion claiming fraud in your divorce settlement. He's asking to have the entire divorce reopened. We need to talk. Today, if possible. My blood went cold. What's wrong? Patricia asked, seeing my face. I handed her the baby and called Robert back. He answered immediately. Natalie, congratulations on the baby, but we have a problem. What kind of problem? Derek's claiming you deliberately hid the Hamilton contract during your divorce proceedings. He's arguing that you knew about the contract before you separated, that you manipulated the timeline to exclude him from the assets, and that you committed fraud by not disclosing it. He's asking the court to reopen the settlement and award him half of everything you've built. That's insane. The contract didn't exist when we separated. But you'd had the meeting. You knew it was coming. His lawyer is arguing you had a reasonable expectation of that income and should have disclosed it. Can they do that? They can try. And the problem is you're a public figure now. The press conference made this news. If this goes to court, it'll be very public. Very messy. And even if you win, the publicity could damage your business reputation. I closed my eyes. Grace was sleeping in Patricia's arms. My daughter, less than an hour old, and already Derek was trying to take from her. What do I do? We fight. We show the timeline. We prove you didn't sign anything until after the separation date. But Natalie, I need to know. Is there anything he could use against you? Any emails about the contract before the separation? Any documentation that shows you knew it was coming? I thought back. The meeting with Hamilton had been the day before Derek asked for the divorce. I'd called Derek after, left voicemails. Had I mentioned the contract in those messages? I might have left voicemails the day before he asked for the divorce, talking about having good news. I didn't say what it was, but he could argue you were referring to the contract, that you knew about it before the separation. I was calling to tell him about the baby too. I found out that morning. The good news could have been about the pregnancy. That's good.
We can use that.
But this is going to be a fight, Natalie. Are you ready for that?
Was I?
I'd just given birth. I had a newborn, a company to run, a project that needed me. And now I had to fight Derek all over again for what was rightfully mine. I don't have a choice, I said. He's not taking this from me. From us.
Good.
I'll file our response tomorrow. In the meantime, don't talk to Derek. Don't respond to his calls or messages. Don't engage on social media. Let me handle this. I agreed and hung up. Patricia was watching me with concern. What happened? Derek's trying to take the company. Claims I hid it during the divorce. Her face hardened. That boy has lost his mind. You built that company yourself. Try telling that to a judge. Janet arrived then, taking in the scene. What's wrong? You just had a baby. You should be celebrating. I told her. Her expression went from shock to fury.
He can do this.
He left you. He chose Vivian. He chose what he thought was a better deal. Now he wants both. My phone rang again. Derek's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call from an unknown number. I answered it without thinking. Ms. Brennan? This is Kelly Wright from Channel 7 News. We're doing a story on your company and wanted to get your comment on the allegations your ex-husband is making about fraud in your divorce. Do you have a statement? I hung up. The phone rang immediately. Another reporter. This was already public. Already news. Derek had made sure of that. I turned off my phone and looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully in her grandmother's arms. She had no idea her father was trying to destroy the future I'd built for her. I need to make a statement, I said. Get ahead of this before Derek controls the narrative. You just had a baby, Patricia said. You need rest. I need to protect my daughter. Tom, can you get a camera crew here? Something small, just for a statement. Tom looked uncertain. Natalie, maybe wait. Talk to your lawyer first. Derek's already talking. Every minute I'm silent, he's shaping how people see this. I need to tell my side. Tom made some calls. An hour later, a small news crew was in my hospital room. I was in a hospital gown, exhausted and hormonal, holding my newborn daughter. But I was also angry. And anger made me sharp. The camera started rolling. My name is Natalie Brennan. 6 months ago, my husband left me while I was pregnant. He didn't want this baby. He wanted a divorce, so he could marry his boss, a wealthy woman who could give him the lifestyle he felt entitled to. I agreed to the divorce. I asked for fair child support for our daughter, and the courts agreed. Everything was legal, everything was documented, everything was final. I adjusted Grace in my arms. She was perfect ammunition. Visual proof of what Derek had abandoned. At the time of our separation, I was a struggling engineer with debt and a dream. I'd been working on a sustainable construction concept for 2 years. After we separated, after he left, I finally got my break. I signed a contract and built a company from nothing while pregnant and alone. I did it with my own skills, my own work, my own vision. Derek had nothing to do with it. He'd already chosen his new life. I looked directly at the camera. Now that my success is public, he wants back in. He's claiming fraud, claiming I hid assets, claiming he deserves half of what I built. But the courts will show the truth. The timeline is clear. The documentation is clear. Derek made his choice. He doesn't get to unmake it because he regrets it. The reporter asked a few questions, which I answered calmly. Then they left. Tom looked worried. Your lawyer's going to be furious.
Probably.
But Derek started this fight publicly. I'm finishing it publicly. The statement aired that night on the evening news. By morning, it was everywhere. Social media exploded. The story had everything people loved: betrayal, pregnancy, success, revenge. The comments were mostly supportive. She's a queen for building an empire while pregnant. He left her and now wants her money? Men are trash. This is why you never underestimate a woman. But there were negative comments too. She must have known about the contract before the divorce. Something doesn't add up. Gold digger trying to keep money from the baby's father. Derek made his own statement, of course. Played the victim. Said he was just trying to protect his rights, that I'd manipulated the system, that he only wanted what was fair for his daughter.
His daughter. The one he'd said he didn't want.
The one he'd rejected before she was born. The whole thing became a media circus. My company's phone wouldn't stop ringing. James Hamilton called, concerned about the publicity affecting the project. I assured him it wouldn't. But privately, I was terrified. Because Derek had resources now. Vivian's resources. And if she was willing to fund this legal battle, it could drag on for months. Years, even. I couldn't afford that. Not financially, I had money now. But emotionally, mentally, I couldn't survive a prolonged war while raising a newborn and running a company. Something had to give. I just hoped it wouldn't be me. Grace started crying. I held her close, breathing in her baby's smell, letting her need for me ground me in what mattered. I've got you, I whispered to her. No matter what happens, I've got you. Outside my hospital room, the media circus continued. Inside, I held my daughter and tried to remember why I was fighting. For her. For the future she deserved. For the lesson I needed to teach her about standing up for yourself even when the world tried to tear you down. Derek thought he could break me again. He thought now that I had something to lose, I'd be vulnerable. Willing to negotiate. Willing to give up part of what I'd built just to make him go away. He was wrong. I'd survived losing my parents. I'd survived his betrayal. I'd survived building a company while pregnant and alone. I'd survived this too. But as I looked at Grace's perfect face and thought about the battle ahead, I couldn't help wondering, at what cost? The legal battle started 3 days after I brought Grace home from the hospital. Robert warned me it would be brutal, but I didn't understand what brutal meant until I lived it. Derek's lawyer subpoenaed everything. Every email, every text, every phone record from the 6 months before our separation. They wanted proof I'd been planning to leave him, that I'd hidden the contract deliberately. I sat in my home office, Grace sleeping in a bassinet beside me, going through thousands of messages. Each one felt like reliving the death of my marriage. The texts where Derek said he'd be home late again. The emails where I begged him to come to counseling. The call logs showing how many times I'd tried to reach him the day I found out about the contract. But there was one voicemail that made my stomach drop. Derek, it's me. I just got out of the Hamilton meeting. I can't tell you details yet, but something amazing might be happening.
Call me back.
I love you. It was vague, but Derek's lawyer would argue it proved I knew about the contract before our separation. That I'd deliberately kept it from him. Robert listened to it and sighed. It's not great, but it's not damning either. You said might be happening. That's not the same as having a signed contract. Will a judge see it that way? Depends on the judge. Derek's team is pushing for Judge Morrison. He tends to favor reopening settlements when there's any hint of hidden assets. Judge Morrison. I looked him up that night while nursing Grace. Conservative, traditional, with a track record of believing men who claimed their ex-wives had cheated them in divorce. My heart sank. The stress was affecting everything. My milk supply dropped. Grace cried constantly, sensing my anxiety. I was running on 2 hours of sleep a night, trying to manage a company, care for a newborn, and fight a legal battle that felt designed to destroy me. Tom stepped up, basically running the company, while I dealt with the chaos. But even he couldn't handle everything. We started missing deadlines. Small things at first, then bigger ones. James called, concerned. "Natalie, I understand you're going through something personal, but this project can't fall behind. We have investors watching." "I know. I'm handling it. Are you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're drowning." I was. But admitting that felt like giving Derek ammunition. Then Vivian made her move. She showed up at my office 2 weeks into the legal battle. I was there with Grace, trying to review contracts while bouncing a crying baby. I looked like hell. Unwashed hair, formula-stained shirt, bags under my eyes so dark they looked like bruises. Vivian looked immaculate. Designer suit, perfect makeup, an expression of false sympathy. "Natalie, we need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about. Please leave." She sat down uninvited. "Actually, we do. I'm here to make you an offer." "I don't want anything from you. You want this to end, don't you? The legal battle, the media attention, the stress? It's affecting your business, your baby, your health." She was right, and we both knew it. Grace hadn't slept more than an hour at a time in days. The pediatrician said it was colic, aggravated by my stress hormones passing through breast milk. "What do you want, Vivian?" "I want to make this go away. Derek's being stubborn, but I can convince him to drop the lawsuit. All you have to do is give him 25% of your company." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're insane." "Am I?" "Think about it. 25% to make this nightmare end. You keep control, keep the majority, keep building your life. Or you can keep fighting, keep bleeding money on legal fees, keep watching your reputation crumble while your baby suffers. Get out." The offer stands for 48 hours. After that, we're going full scorched earth. Derek's already talked to 3 of your engineers, offering them positions at Crossbuild. How long before your team starts jumping ship? She left, and I sat there shaking. She was trying to poach my team. Of course she was. Why destroy me in court when she could destroy my company from within? I called Tom. "Staff meeting. Tomorrow morning. Everyone." The meeting was a disaster. 3 of my engineers admitted Derek had approached them. 2 were considering the offers. The money was better, the projects were established, and they were worried about Brennan Solutions surviving the legal battle. "I can't match Crossbuild salaries," I admitted. "Not yet. But I can promise you that if you stay, if you help me build this, you'll be part of something revolutionary. Something that matters." I lost 2 engineers that week. Then my architect. Derek was systematically dismantling everything I'd built, using Vivian's money and connections to do it. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. 6 weeks of discovery, depositions, and watching my life get picked apart by lawyers who charged more per hour than most people made in a week. My savings drained fast. Legal fees, company expenses, baby costs. I'd thought $850 million meant security, but that money was tied to project completion. Until we finished building, I was surviving on progress payments that barely covered expenses. Then Grace got sick. It started as a fever. I took her to the pediatrician, who said it was probably just a cold. But the fever got worse. She stopped eating. Her crying became weak, pathetic. I rushed her to the emergency room at 2 in the morning. The diagnosis was RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, common in babies, but dangerous for newborns. She needed to be hospitalized. I called into work, told Tom I needed a few days. But a few days turned into a week. Grace was on oxygen, struggling to breathe, and I couldn't leave her. The hospital bills started piling up. My insurance covered some, but not all. The private room I insisted on because I couldn't bear having Grace in the NICU with other sick babies cost $1,000 a day. Patricia came every day, bringing food I didn't eat and comfort I couldn't accept. Jana took shifts so I could shower and grab coffee. But mostly, I sat beside Grace's hospital crib, watching her chest rise and fall, terrified each breath would be her last.
Derek never came.
Never called. His daughter was fighting for her life, and he was too busy trying to steal her future to care. On day 5, I got a call from Tom.
His voice was grim.
Natalie, we have a problem. The city inspector failed our latest review. Says there are code violations. That's impossible. We follow every code to the letter.
I know.
But Derek plays golf with the chief inspector. This is retaliation. They're shutting us down until we fix the alleged violations. How long? 2 weeks minimum. Maybe more. 2 weeks of stoppage meant massive penalties. It meant missing our deadline with Hamilton. It meant everything I'd built could collapse. I broke down. Right there in the hospital room, holding my sick baby, I sobbed. Deep, ugly, desperate sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart. A nurse found me like that and gently took Grace from my arms. You need to rest, she said. You can't help her if you collapse. But I couldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw everything falling apart. My company bankrupt. Grace sick and me unable to afford her care. Derek and Vivian winning, taking what little I had left. Robert called with more bad news. The judge assigned to your case is Morrison. Derek's team got what they wanted. So we're going to lose. Not necessarily, but it's going to be harder. Morrison likes to see mothers stay home with babies. The fact that you're working, that Grace is in daycare, or with you at construction sites, he won't like that. I'm working to support her.
I know.
But Morrison's old-fashioned. He'll see it as choosing career over motherhood. I wanted to scream. How was I supposed to win? If I worked, I was a bad mother. If I didn't work, I couldn't support my child. Every choice led to judgment, criticism, failure. Grace started improving on day 7. Her breathing got easier, her color better. The doctor said we could. Derek had found my weakness. Not the company, not the money, but her.
Grace.
The one thing I couldn't afford to lose. And he was using her to destroy me. As we left the hospital, I realized this was what rock bottom felt like. Holding your baby while everything else crumbles. Choosing between battles you can't win. Watching the life you built get systematically destroyed by someone who once promised to love you forever. Patricia drove us home in silence. Grace slept peacefully, unaware that her father was trying to take her away. Unaware that her mother was losing a war she'd never wanted to fight. I'd thought the worst was behind me when Derek left. I was wrong. The worst was right now, watching him try to take everything that mattered. And knowing that this time, I might not be strong enough to stop him. I didn't sleep that first night home. Every time Grace made a sound, I panicked, checking her breathing, her temperature, terrified she'd get sick again. By morning, I was delirious with exhaustion. Patricia made breakfast while I sat at the kitchen table, trying to read the custody motion Derek's lawyer had filed. The words blurred together. Unfit mother. Neglectful. Prioritizing career. Unsafe environments. You need help, Patricia said, setting coffee in front of me. Real help. Not just with Grace, with everything. I can't afford. I'll pay for it. A nanny, a housekeeper, whatever you need. I looked up at her, confused. Why would you do that? Because I failed you before. Because my son is trying to destroy you, and I helped create the monster he became. And because that baby deserves better than watching her mother fall apart. I wanted to refuse out of pride, but I couldn't. I needed help desperately. That afternoon, Patricia brought someone to meet me. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and worn hands. Maria Gonzalez. She'd been Patricia's housekeeper 20 years ago before starting her own childcare business. Patricia told me your situation, Maria said, watching me struggle to keep my eyes open while Grace fussed. I'd like to help. I can't pay much right now. We'll figure that out later. Right now, you need someone who understands what you're going through. I raised 3 kids alone after my husband died. I built a business while everyone told me I couldn't. I know this fight. She took Grace from my arms, and within minutes, my daughter was calm. Go shower, Maria ordered. Then sleep. I'll handle things here. I wanted to protest, but my body was already moving toward the stairs. I showered and collapsed into bed, sleeping for 6 straight hours. The longest stretch since Grace was born. When I woke, the house was quiet. I found Maria in the kitchen, Grace sleeping peacefully in her arms, my laptop open on the table. I hope you don't mind, she said. I was reading about your case. The news articles, the court documents you left out. This man, your ex-husband, he's something else. He's trying to take everything.
No, mija.
He's trying to take what you built because he can't build anything himself. There's a difference. She adjusted Grace gently. Tell me, when you were married, did he ever create anything? Or did he just manage what others created? I thought about it. Derek had always been in management, never creation. He organized other people's work, took credit for team successes, climbed ladders built by others. He managed, I admitted.
And you?
You create. You build. That's why he needs you, or needs to destroy you. Because he knows he can't do what you do. Her words sat heavy in my chest. I'd never thought of it that way.
My phone rang. Tom.
Natalie, can you come to the office? We have a situation. What kind of situation? Just come. And bring a lawyer if you can. I called Robert and we met at my office an hour later. Tom was there with 2 of my remaining engineers and a woman I didn't recognize. She was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and a folder clutched to her chest. This is Amanda, Tom said. She works at Crossbuild. Or she did until this morning. Amanda looked at me, then at Robert. I need to know I'm protected before I say anything. I just quit my job to be here. Robert leaned forward. Protected from what? From Vivian Cross and Derek Lawson. From what they'll do when they find out I've talked to you. What do you know? I asked. She opened her folder and pulled out printed emails. I was Vivian's assistant for 2 years. I've seen things, heard things, about their relationship, about their plans for your company. My heart raced. What kind of things? Their affair started 8 months before your divorce. I have emails, hotel receipts, records of gifts Derek bought her with your joint credit cards. 8 months. While I was trying to save our marriage, going to counseling alone, he'd been with her for 8 months. There's more, Amanda continued. They've been planning this lawsuit for months. Before your press conference. They knew about your contract. That's impossible. How could they know? Vivian has connections everywhere. She had someone at Hamilton Development. They told her about your deal weeks ago. The whole thing, Derek acting surprised at the press conference? That was planned. They wanted public sympathy. Robert was taking notes furiously. Why are you telling us this? Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Because I heard them laughing about it. About how they were going to take your company and your baby. Vivian said she said foster care would be better than being raised by someone like you. That's when I knew I had to leave. The room went silent. Even Robert looked shocked. Will you testify? He asked finally. If you protect me. Vivian's powerful. She could ruin my career. We'll protect you, I said. Whatever it takes. We spent 3 hours going through Amanda's evidence. Emails showing Derek and Vivian planning their future while we were still married. Financial records of Derek using our money for their affair. And most damning, correspondence about their plan to take my company. This changes everything, Robert said. With this evidence, we can prove fraud on Derek's part during your marriage. We can show the affair preceded your separation by months. Judge Morrison might be traditional, but he hates adultery more than he hates working mothers. But there was more. Amanda had recordings. Legal in our state, since she was party to the conversations. She played one on her phone. Vivian's voice, Once we get her company, we'll fold it into cross-build. Her sustainable construction model will give us the environmental edge we need for government contracts. Derek's voice. What about Natalie? What about her? She'll have nothing. No company, no money to fight for custody. Maybe she'll finally learn her place. Sometimes I think I should have stayed with her until after she'd signed the contract. And split it in the divorce? No, this is better. Let her build it, then take it. She does the work. We get the reward. I listened to my ex-husband and his new fiancée plan my destruction, like they were discussing dinner plans. Cold, calculated, cruel. We can bury them with this, Robert said. But Natalie, if we use it, this gets ugly.
Public.
They'll come after you harder. I thought about Grace, about the company I'd built, about every night I'd spent wondering what I'd done wrong to make Derek leave. Use it, I said. Use all of it. Amanda looked relieved. There's one more thing. Vivian's been cooking her company's books, inflating profits to attract investors. I have proof of that too. Why didn't you report it before? Robert asked. Because I was scared. Because I needed my job. Because I thought it wasn't my problem. She looked at me. But when I saw what they were doing to you, to your baby, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. After Amanda left, under Robert's protection and with a promise of a job at Brennan Solutions when this was over, I sat in my empty office and cried. Not from sadness this time. From relief. From validation. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't driven Derek away. He'd been planning his exit for months, setting me up to fail, building his new life on the destruction of our old one. Tom put his hand on my shoulder. What now? Now we fight. But first, I need to make a call. I called James Hamilton and told him everything. The lawsuit, the sabotage, the code violations that weren't real. I expected him to pull the contract, to protect his investment by distancing himself from the drama. Instead, he laughed. Natalie, do you know why I chose you? Because of my sustainable design.
No.
I mean, yes, that too. But I chose you because in 2 years of pitching, after being rejected and stolen from and dismissed, you kept coming back. You had resilience. That's rare. I don't feel resilient right now. But you're still fighting. Still showing up. That's resilience. He paused. The city inspector called me about those violations. I made some calls of my own. Turns out the chief inspector owes me a favor. Your sites are clear to resume work tomorrow. I couldn't speak through the tears. Bill my project, Natalie. I'll handle the politics. And if CrossBuild tries to poach any more of your people, send them to me. I have a few things to say about Vivian Cross and her business practices. After we hung up, I looked around my office. Photos of construction sites covered one wall. Plans for future projects covered another. And in the corner, Grace's portable crib sat next to my desk. This was what I'd built. Not just a company, but a life. A future. A legacy for my daughter. Maria called to check in. Grace was fine, sleeping peacefully.
Take your time, she said.
Handle your business. Your baby is safe. My baby was safe. I had evidence that could destroy Derek's case. I had allies I didn't know existed. I had a choice to make. I could take Vivian's deal. 30% and a board seat for Derek. End the fighting, accept the loss, move on with what I had left. Or I could fight. Use Amanda's evidence. Expose their affair, their fraud, their plans. Risk everything on Judge Morrison seeing the truth. Robert laid out both options. If we fight and lose, you could lose custody. Lose the company. Lose everything. And if we win, Derek gets nothing. No custody, no money, no claim on your company. Vivian potentially faces fraud charges. You're free.
Free.
Such a simple word for such a complicated concept. I thought about Grace, about the world I wanted her to grow up in. One where people like Derek and Vivian won, or one where working hard and building something real mattered. File everything, I said. Every piece of evidence. Every recording. Everything. Are you sure? I thought about my parents, about what my father used to say. That builders create things that last. That integrity matters more than money. That standing up for what's right is never wrong, even when it's hard. I'm sure. They want to fight? They've got one. Robert smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll file tomorrow. Derek's about to learn what happens when you underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. But that wasn't true anymore. I had everything to lose. Grace, my company, my future. That's what made this choice impossible. And that's what made it necessary. I went home that night to find Patricia teaching Maria her famous soup recipe while Grace watched from her bouncer. 3 generations of women in my kitchen, building something together. How did it go? Patricia asked. We're going to war, I said. She nodded. Good. It's about time someone stood up to my son. That night, I held Grace and told her about the choice I'd made. She couldn't understand, but I needed to say it out loud. I could have taken the easy path, given up part of what I built to make the fighting stop. But then what would I teach you? That bullies win if they push hard enough? That when things get difficult, you give up? No, baby girl. We're going to fight. It might get ugly. We might lose. But we're going to stand up for ourselves. Because that's what strong women do. She gurgled and grabbed my finger, holding on tight. Like she understood. Like she was telling me she was with me. Tomorrow, Robert would file our response. Tomorrow, Derek would learn about Amanda, about the evidence, about the war he'd started but couldn't win. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I held my daughter and felt something I hadn't felt since Derek asked for divorce. Hope. Not hope that everything would be easy. Hope that everything would be worth it. Hope that Grace would grow up knowing her mother fought for her, for their future, for what was right. The impossible choice had been made. Now came the impossible fight. But for the first time in months, I was ready for it. The courtroom was packed. Word had leaked that explosive evidence would be presented in the Brennan versus Lawson custody hearing. Business journalists, gossip columnists, and curious members of the public filled every seat. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Robert, wearing the suit I'd bought for my first client meeting after Grace was born. Professional, powerful, nothing like the broken woman Derek had left. Derek entered with his legal team and Vivian. She wore white. White like she was some innocent victim in all this. They sat directly behind Derek, her hand possessively on his shoulder. Judge Morrison called the court to order. He was exactly what I'd feared, 70 years old, stern-faced, with photos of his own stay-at-home wife and 6 children on his desk. Derek's lawyer went first. Your Honor, we're here because Ms. Brennan has refused reasonable custody arrangements for my client's daughter. She's shown a pattern of putting career before childcare, exposing the infant to dangerous construction sites, and— Objection, Robert said calmly. Counsel is making arguments, not presenting facts. Sustained. Stick to the facts, counselor. Derek's lawyer regrouped. Mr. Lawson simply wants to be part of his daughter's life. He's prepared to provide a stable, 2-parent home with his fiancée, Ms. Cross. I watched Derek nod along, playing the concerned father. The same man who'd called Grace a mistake. Then it was our turn. Your Honor, Robert began, we have evidence that Mr. Lawson's concern for his daughter is a recent development. In fact, we have evidence that this entire custody battle is part of a larger scheme to damage Ms. Brennan's business and reputation. That's a serious accusation, Counselor. Yes, Your Honor. Which is why we've brought proof. Robert called Amanda to the stand. She looked terrified but determined. As she was sworn in, I saw Vivian's face go white. Ms. Coleman, what was your position at Crossbuild Industries? I was Ms. Cross's personal assistant for 2 years. And why did you leave that position? Because I discovered my employer was engaged in activities I couldn't morally support. Derek's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Relevance. I'll allow it, Judge Morrison said. But get to the point quickly, Counselor. Robert nodded. Miss Coleman, what activities are you referring to? Amanda took a deep breath. Miss Cross and Mr. Lawson have been having an affair since March of last year, 8 months before he filed for divorce. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. That's a lie. Derek shouted. Mr. Lawson, control yourself or I'll have you removed, the judge warned. Robert continued. Do you have proof of this affair? Yes. Amanda opened her folder. Email correspondence, hotel receipts, credit card records showing Mr. Lawson used joint marital funds to buy gifts for Miss Cross. Each piece of evidence was entered into the record. Derek sank lower in his chair with each one. Is there more? Robert asked. Yes. I have recordings of Miss Cross and Mr. Lawson discussing their plans to take Miss Brennan's company. Objection. Derek's lawyer was on his feet. Those recordings were obtained illegally. Actually, Robert said smoothly, our state is a one-party consent state. Ms. Coleman was party to these conversations, making the recordings legal. Judge Morrison nodded. I'll allow them. The first recording played. The courtroom was silent except for Vivian's voice explaining how they'd take my company after I'd built it. How they'd let me do the work, then steal the reward. I watched Derek's face as his own voice filled the courtroom, saying he should have stayed with me until after I'd signed the contract. Calculating. Cold. Nothing like the man I'd married. Or maybe exactly like him. Maybe I'd just never seen it before. The second recording was worse. Vivian laughing about how foster care would be better than Grace being raised by me. Derek agreeing, saying I'd learn my place once I had nothing. Judge Morrison's expression had changed. The stern face now showed disgust. Miss Coleman, Robert continued, you mentioned other activities you couldn't support. What else did you discover? Amanda glanced at Vivian. Financial fraud. Ms. Cross has been inflating Crossbuild's profit reports to attract investors. She's been hiding debt, manipulating contracts, lying to shareholders. Objection. Derek's lawyer shouted. This has nothing to do with custody. Your Honor, Robert said, it speaks to the character of the home Mr. Lawson is proposing for the child. If Miss Cross is engaged in criminal fraud, I'll hear it, the judge said. Amanda presented her evidence. Doctored financial statements. Hidden debts. A shell game of money that made Crossbuild look profitable when it was actually bleeding cash. Vivian stood up. This is ridiculous. Your Honor, this woman is clearly being paid to lie. Miss Cross, sit down or leave my courtroom, Judge Morrison snapped. But Vivian was past caring. She's nobody, a disgruntled employee trying to. Actually, a new voice said from the gallery, she's telling the truth. Everyone turned. James Hamilton stood in the back of the courtroom. Mr. Hamilton? The judge looked confused. What's your interest in this matter? I'm Miss Brennan's primary client, Your Honor, and I have information relevant to this case. May I approach? The judge nodded. James walked forward, every inch the powerful businessman. But you knew about the affair, the judge said. You knew you were using marital funds for it. You knew you were planning to take your ex-wife's company. Vivian said. She told me. That's enough. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. I've heard enough. Mr. Lawson, you abandoned your pregnant wife for another woman. You've shown no interest in your daughter except as a tool to hurt her mother. You've attempted to steal a company you had no part in building. And you've proposed placing this child in a home with a woman who appears to be facing criminal fraud charges. He looked at me. Miss Brennan, while I typically believe children need their fathers, in this case, I'm granting you sole custody. Mr. Lawson will have supervised visitation only if and when you deem it appropriate. He will continue paying child support as previously ordered. Your Honor, Derek's lawyer started. I'm not finished. As for the motion to reopen the divorce settlement, it's denied. In fact, given the evidence of Mr. Lawson using marital funds for his affair, Ms. Brennan may have grounds to sue for additional damages. Your Honor, Robert said, We're also requesting a restraining order preventing Mr. Lawson or Ms. Cross from coming within 500 feet of Ms. Brennan or her place of business. Granted. The gavel came down. This court is adjourned. The aftermath was chaos. Reporters swarmed. Vivian was escorted out by security, screaming about lawsuits and lies. Derek tried to approach me, but court officers blocked him. "Natalie, please," he called over the noise. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the fraud. I looked at him one last time. This man I'd loved. This man I'd built a life with. This man who'd thrown it all away for money that didn't exist. "It doesn't matter," I said. "You knew about everything else." Outside the courthouse, cameras everywhere. Robert and James flanked me as I gave a brief statement. I'm grateful for the judge's decision. My focus now is on my daughter and my company. I hope this serves as a reminder that hard work and integrity matter more than shortcuts and schemes. "Ms. Brennan," a reporter called, "what do you say to other women facing similar situations?" I thought about the last year. The pain, the fear, the nights I'd wanted to give up. I say that your worth isn't determined by who leaves you. It's determined by what you build after they're gone. And you can build anything. That evening, the news was everywhere. Construction CEO wins custody battle. Cross-build under SEC investigation. Millionaire's mistress faces fraud charges. Derek called 17 times. I didn't answer. Vivian was arrested that night on multiple counts of fraud. Derek wasn't charged, but his reputation was destroyed. No one would hire a project manager who tried to steal his ex-wife's company. Patricia came by with champagne. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. Janet brought pizza. Tom brought his whole team. Maria cooked her famous soup. My house filled with people who'd supported me, believed in me, fought for me. Amanda arrived last, looking nervous. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." "You saved us," I interrupted. "You were brave when it mattered." "Thank you." "So, about that job offer?" "Start Monday. Senior administrative position. Full benefits."
And Amanda?
"We're going to need someone to manage our new government contracts. James thinks with cross-build out of the picture, we're perfectly positioned to take over their projects."
She cried. Happy tears this time.
Late that night, after everyone left, I sat in Grace's nursery. She was asleep, blissfully unaware of what had happened, of how close we'd come to losing everything. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number.
"I'm sorry."
"For everything. I threw away the best thing in my life for an illusion. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know that I see it now. What I lost. What you are. What you built."
"I'm sorry."
I deleted it without responding. Derek's apologies meant nothing now. He was sorry because he'd lost, not because he'd hurt us. Another text came through, this one from James. "Congratulations on today. By the way, we break ground next spring," I told them. 50 units in the first phase. If it works, we'll expand to 500. When it works, James corrected. Natalie doesn't do failure. The party continued. Awards were given. Speeches were made. I gave a brief talk about sustainable building and second chances, carefully not mentioning my ex-husband, but everyone knowing the story anyway. Amanda found me during dessert. She was running our government contracts division now, brilliant at navigating bureaucracy and building relationships. "Did you see?" She showed me her phone. A news alert. Vivian Cross pleads guilty to 15 counts of fraud. She'd taken a deal. 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Her family's money gone to restitution. Her reputation destroyed. Everything she'd valued stripped away. "I should feel bad for her," Amanda said. "Do you?"
"No."
She destroyed people. Employees who trusted her. Investors who believed in her. You, who did nothing but build something beautiful. She deserves what she got. Patricia approached with Grace in her arms. "Someone wants her, Mama." I took my daughter, who immediately grabbed my necklace and tried to eat it. Patricia had been true to her word about being involved. She'd even started a college fund for Grace, to make up for my son's failures. "You know," Patricia said quietly, "I owe you an apology I never properly gave. I spent years looking down on you for being self-made, for working hard, for not having family money. But you know what? You're worth 10 of the people I thought were suitable for Derek." "Thank you." "And Derek? He'll realize one day what he lost. Not the money or the company. You. The woman who would have loved him without any of it. The woman who built an empire while he was chasing someone else's." "Maybe," I said. "But I don't care anymore if he does." And I meant it. Derek was the past. A necessary past that had taught me my own strength, but past nonetheless. The future was Grace learning to walk in my office while I designed buildings. It was Tom mentoring young engineers who reminded him of himself. It was Maria teaching Patricia how to braid Grace's hair while they swapped stories. It was Amanda calling excitedly about a new contract worth twice the Hamilton project. It was also Jonathan Reed, the structural engineer James had introduced me to last month. We'd had coffee twice, dinner once. He made me laugh. He didn't mind that I brought Grace to our second date. He was building his own firm, understood the long hours, the dedication required. He'd read about my story and said, "That guy was an idiot. His loss." We were taking it slow. I wasn't ready for more yet. But possibility? That felt good. As the party wound down, I gave my final speech of the night. A year ago, I was a pregnant woman whose husband had just left her for someone he thought was better. I had debt, morning sickness, and a dream everyone said was impossible. Today, Brennan Solutions employs 57 people. We've revolutionized sustainable construction in our state. We're building homes for working families. And we're just getting started. Applause filled the room. But I wasn't done. To everyone who's been told they're not enough, that they should settle, that they should give up their dreams because someone else doesn't believe in them, look at what we built. Look at what's possible when you refuse to let someone else's opinion define your worth. The room erupted. Standing ovation. Grace clapped along, not understanding but caught up in the joy. Later, cleaning up toys in my living room, our living room, the one Derek had walked out of thinking he was escaping to something better, I found myself laughing. Not bitter laughter. Real, deep, joyful laughter. He'd wanted the high life, the wealthy wife, the easy path to success. He'd gotten a criminal facing prison time and a reputation so destroyed he couldn't find work in his own field. I'd wanted a partner, a family, someone who believed in building something together. I'd gotten a daughter who lit up my world, a chosen family who supported me unconditionally, and a company that was changing how people thought about construction. We'd both gotten what we deserved, I suppose. My phone buzzed. An email from a publisher. They wanted to publish my story. From abandoned to abundant, a woman's journey to building an empire. I'd written it during Grace's naps. Part therapy, part blueprint for other women facing similar situations. The advance would go into Grace's college fund. Derek was mentioned, of course, but not by name. He was simply my ex-husband. A footnote in a larger story about resilience, determination, and the power of believing in yourself when no one else does. That's all he was now. A footnote. The empire he'd tried to steal? It was worth double what it had been during our divorce. The woman he'd said wasn't worthy? She was speaking at conferences, winning awards, being interviewed by major publications. The baby he didn't want? She was perfection itself. Smart, funny, determined. She'd never know a moment of feeling unwanted or unworthy. I'd make sure of that. And me? The woman who'd sobbed on a kitchen floor, sure her life was over? I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Building things that last. Creating opportunities for others. Raising a daughter who'd never doubt her worth. Living a life that was mine, entirely mine, built on my terms with my own hands. Derek had done me a favor, really. By leaving, he'd forced me to discover what I was capable of. By trying to destroy me, he'd revealed my strength. By underestimating me, he'd motivated me to exceed even my own expectations.
So thank you, Derek.
Thank you for showing me exactly who you were. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to build this life without you. It's a beautiful life, a powerful life, a life that proves every single day that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success. It's happiness. It's building something amazing from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. And that's exactly what I did. Grace started fussing, ready for bed. I picked her up, this miracle who'd given me strength when I had none left. Together, we headed upstairs to her nursery, past my home office where blueprints for the affordable housing project covered every surface. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to prove that sustainable construction was the future. New chances to employ people who'd been overlooked, underestimated, told they weren't enough. But tonight, I'd rock my daughter to sleep in the house Derek had walked out of, in the life he'd rejected, surrounded by the success he'd never seen coming. And I'd go to bed knowing that everything, every struggle, every tear, every moment of doubt, had been worth it. Because this was what winning looked like. Not destroying your enemies. Not proving them wrong. Building something so beautiful, so powerful, so undeniably successful that their opinions simply ceased to matter. I'd built an empire while Derek thought I was worthless. And that, my friends, is the sweetest victory of all. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was long, but I hope it resonated with those of you who've been underestimated, overlooked, or told you weren't enough. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that they can rebuild after betrayal. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever had someone underestimate you? How did you prove them wrong? And remember, your worth isn't determined by who leaves you. It's determined by what you build after they're gone. Until next time, keep building. Keep believing. Keep proving that the best revenge is massive success.